Between 2008 and 2014, I had a privilege of sitting in the Conversation for Social Change circles as a participant facilitator. I experienced and witnessed the transformation in levels that none of us could have ever imagined. These conversations were started by Maryknoll Sisters peace building team, which I am part of. And we invited people of diverse backgrounds to have a conversation with one another in a non-evaluative space. In 2010, we held similar conversations in the Rift Valley, one of the regions in Kenya, which was affected negatively by the post-election violence, which happened in 2007, 2008. These spits of violence have become recurrent almost every 5 years, whenever there is an election cycle. So people were tired of the pain, almost to a point of despair. Just like in the first reading, Prophet Habakkuk addressed his concern with God regarding the violence the Israelites were experiencing in the hands of the Babylonians. The participants of the Conversation for Social Change in the Rift Valley area raised their voice of anguish and complaints to God. How long, O God, I cry for help, but you do not listen. The post-election violence 2007-2008 had claimed the lives of their loved ones and destroyed their property. Many became internally displaced people in their own country. Indeed, they had faith, but their faith was tested. Yet they were able to cry out to God to intervene and restore peace and harmony in their midst. For them, God had the power to end the injustices, yet they were shocked that this cycle of violence recurred every time they had general elections. Their resilience was in their faith. Just like Habakkuk, who took it with God and demanded an answer, they too wondered, has God abandoned them? How come the innocent people, the children, the elderly, and women are suffering? Habakkuk reminds us that even when we experience God's silence, God is still aware of our pain and suffering of God's people. In his complaint, Habakkuk hears God's response. Write down the vision, write it clearly upon the tablet, so that one can read it readily. For the vision still has its time. If the vision delays, wait for it. For indeed the vision will surely come. It will not be late. This was the assurance for the Israelites that God has not abandoned them. And it was necessary to have the vision of hope written down as a reminder that God has always been with them. And even now, when their suffering has overtaken them, they are reminded to have something written down to keep their faith alive. Faith has an amazing power to transform our lives from despair to hopeful one. Faith has the ability to empower us to act, to believe in the power bigger than ourselves, which is working within us. to achieve a better future. When something is written down, people have something to go back to. Or when a story is told and retold, it becomes a part of people's lives, like a point of reference to remind future generations of the faithfulness of God, especially in difficult moments. This metaphor, it is reflected in all the Israelite history, highlighting many ways God intervened for them and rescues them from oppressions and suffering. We too are familiar with the inspirational stories in our own families, in our own communities, and in our own nations, which keep our hope alive in times of difficulties. Faith is a powerful image for people who feel powerless, to be able to imagine a new future where they can regain their power again, where they can reconnect and feel whole once again, to see the possibilities of the present moment. Faith involves a prophetic imagination to be able to imagine new symbols and new images which will motivate and inspire people to act in ways that transforms the structures of injustice into processes of justice and freedom. Faith calls for patience and perseverance. And that's why God insisted that. Write down the vision. If it delays, keep waiting, because indeed the vision will come. This is the faith which keeps the hungry, the elderly, the sick, the homeless, and the marginalized hope for a better future. Indeed, it's the same faith Jesus' disciples are longing for after realizing that there is no future without forgiveness. It is not surprising that the disciples appeal to Jesus. Increase our faith. Jesus does not give his disciples an easy answer to their request for faith. And the amazing thing is, even the little faith can do. He told his disciples, if they have faith to the size of a mustard seed, the mustard seed is so small. Indeed, they can command this mulberry tree to be uprooted and be planted into the sea. This is an image Jesus is using to illustrate the power of faith. No matter how small that faith is, he is aware that it is when we believe in something that we are able to realize it. Indeed, Jesus is not talking of a magic ways of doing things. Rather, it is the role faith plays in realizing our vision, our dreams, and our desires. We all are aware that any social transformation takes time. It involves conversion of the heart before it is translated into action. Changing the structures of injustice does not happen overnight. My brothers and sisters, this is not an instant tea or an instant coffee. People need to have compassion with one another to keep their hope alive. Today, Jesus reminds us that faith is necessary for a meaningful life. Unless we have faith, it is not easy to live the gospel values of forgiveness, service to one another, and love of God. This is the same message St. Paul urges Timothy to remain strong in the spirit of faith. It is not easy to see our interconnectedness and the suffering of others unless our faith in Jesus is increased and strengthened. Indeed, to continue with our ministry as disciples, as followers, as servants whose service is to transform the oppression structures in our community. We too are asking Jesus, Lord, increase our faith. Amen.